M690 Studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. Be a part of the show by calling 915-544-KTSM, 915-544-5876, or comment online on our stream at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. It's 4 p.m. Mountain Time, and that means it's time to talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thanks for joining us, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the Facebook page, the YouTube, the Twitter, the Twitch, all those places, either Talk El Paso, Andrew J. Polk, or somewhere in between. You can find us and be able to join in on the conversation that we have every Monday through Friday, 4 to 6 p.m. right here on News Radio 690 KTSM. About the many things that affect us here in the borderland, and it does seem like there's more things coming in the news lately than almost ever before. Okay, I don't have an absolute historical perspective on that, but in recent times, for sure, I'm pretty confident in saying that more things are happening, more issues crossing straight through our backyard. And I don't see that slowing down anytime soon either. So, I mean, there's all conversations about, discourse and the way things are structured that I'm not opposed to having, but even just through our backyard, like literally right here, affecting us here at home, the listening area, just a whole lot more. So a couple of those things on my mind here today. Border issues. John Brazelton let us know. To back it off a little bit, he seems to be saying there over on the Facebook. Let us know if that helps out here. But however you're tuned in, because of course we do have it on air, online, and live streaming. So there's a lot of ways to get to us. So if for any reason you're having trouble getting to us in any of these ways, should be able to. And so a couple of those things on my mind today, anyway. Border issues back in another way, but in more surprising ways, confluences that I wouldn't have particularly predicted. Because, okay, John, let us know that's a little bit better. John Hurt's asking about Nancy Pelosi speaking lately. I tend not to seek her out as much as possible, but, I mean, Speaker of the House is a generous term sometimes, and only in title it does seem. But actually, speaking about Congress here, one of the major things on my mind here today, of course, the Ukrainian conflict and everything that comes along with this, the virtual tour happening from Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, continuing on today involving the United States Congress. We've got a few of those sound bites here, some of the more impacting ones. Plus, that issue coming to the borderland as well, if it's not here already, with refugees from the Ukraine ending up making it to the border, the southern border of Texas, of course, but also the United States and Mexico in general. So that's something that is happening in the midst of it, amongst all of these discussions and debates and that ongoing conflict. Plus another one related to, of course, the border. Had a lot of discussion about what is going on with, drug interdiction, enforcement, those kind of things. But what exactly is being done on the kind of response end, even within our own community? Some interesting reporting and responses coming out, even as there's been more talked about with El Paso Police Department, the supplies that are available or maybe should be available, plus, of course, more response to the body cams going on there. A couple of things we got going on here today. So let's jump right in it here. Again, Volodymyr Zelensky addressing a joint session of Congress here today that then was followed up by a address from President Biden here. But just a couple of those clips, speaking at first through an interpreter here again, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky addressing Congress.
Is this a lot to ask for, to create a no-fly zone over Ukraine to save people? Is this too much to ask? Humanitarian no-fly zone.
And, of course, that has been a call that has been coming out of the Ukrainian president and the conflict overall for a while now. My understanding that in Ukraine itself, there are now multiple billboards saying close the skies, a common refrain coming out there, but going a little bit more realistically, because while I'm sure that call will continue on, it has been very, very clear by not even just the United States, but NATO allies in general, that is not exactly on the table in the current conflict, as much as it may be justified. But going on to talk about, well, the air defense systems, there's been some talk out there about Patriot missile systems being deployed to NATO allies. Want to make that clear, that there's been a little bit of confusion that expressed to me, that not technically going to Ukraine now, but some calls for that again through the interpreter here.
what kind of defense systems we need, S-300 and other similar systems. You know how much depends on the battlefield, on the ability to use aircraft, powerful, strong aviation to protect our people.
And you may recall there was that kind of blown deal, that back and forth between primarily Poland, but I think some other former Soviet bloc, but now NATO allies were discussing the transfer of aircraft to Ukraine. Frankly, I see that as pretty well dead at this point, because if you're going to do a secret arms transfer, an arms transfer kind of under the table, not as much out there, doesn't work out that well if you're then having public statements and news releases get sent out about it. But those S-300 systems, some may just happen to find their way across the border of Ukraine. I wouldn't be too surprised. But then Zelensky, who it is, I think, important to point out here, a former actor before he embarked on his political career, speaking directly to Congress without an interpreter, a little bit of halting speech, but very interesting to hear his words and how he addressed them.
I'm addressing the President Biden. You are the leader of the nation, of your great nation. I wish you to be the leader of the world. Being the leader of the world means to be the leader of peace.
And continuing on further here in the address that was again before the joint session of Congress.
I see no sense in life if it cannot stop the death. And this is my main mission as the leader of my people.
And final one we'll play from here, just for this again, from Volodymyr Zelensky, president of Ukraine, in that joint session of Congress.
Strong, is brave and ready to fight for the life of his citizens and citizens of the world, for human rights, for freedom, for the right to live decently and to die when your time comes, and not when it's wanted by someone else.
Again, Volodymyr Zelensky addressing that joint session of Congress with a lot more being talked about there, and then a follow-up address to the nation by President Biden, televised earlier today here. A lot of talk about the aid going to Ukraine, and still looking at that kind of man-portable system level we're still talking about. Now, this is a little bit more international than we're usually focused on, but of course the impacts that have been coming out of the conflict in Ukraine, the war in Ukraine, or as the Russians put it, the ongoing military operation, in that mildly Orwellian sense that they put it here, is starting to have not even just intermediate impacts here. We've had some previous callers, and it's not surprising that there is and very much suspected, dispersal of personnel from local areas to those preventative deployments across the world, frankly, but primarily Europe, having been talked about that. Not surprising that is happening, but we are seeing other ways here. Previous guests on the show and talk about the southern border in a lot of ways. Todd Bensman with the Center for Immigration Studies. The latest from him, just the title here: Notes on Ukrainian War Refugees Reaching the U.S. southern border, published today there over on the CIS website, saying it's inevitable that Ukrainian war refugees would find their way to the utterly besieged American southern border to claim asylum, but it is the American interest to deny and deter Ukrainians from entering this way. So that is a direct impact we're seeing here already that is probably going to be continuing on here. A lot of comments coming in here right now from John Brazelton, Dottie Butler-Torres, John Hertz, and more that we'll get to here in just a second. But let's delve further into that subject on what is going on in our region, if not immediately present in the local area here already, as a bit of aftermath or current impacts, better put there, from the Ukrainian war. So we got to take that next break right now. Coming out of the break, we'll get more into this and talk further about what we're seeing here in the borderland and what it means for us here from all of these impacts, economically, energy-wise, a whole lot more to get into. So back after this break with more Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
I-10 westbound at Loma Land Drive, disabled vehicles blocking the right shoulder there. Gateway Boulevard, northbound at Ellerthorpe, a stalled vehicle blocking the left shoulder. I-10 eastbound between Artcraft and Thorne, you've got slowing there with a couple-minute delay. And an injury accident downtown El Paso Street, south of Paisano at Father Ram. Take Mesa Street or 4th Avenue as alternates there. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
This report is sponsored by Kelly Blue Book. Kelly Blue Book Instant Cash Offer is an official offer to buy your car. Enter your vehicle ID info, answer some questions, then get a no-obligation offer to sell or trade it. Then choose a dealer to purchase your car. Schedule a time and drive away with confidence. For all of the hits, kbb.com it.
Hey, Mario Courtney Lopez here. We know life's moments are definitely better together.
And Smart Mouth mouthwash gives us the confidence to always be ready to make the most of these moments.
Whether in studio, on the red carpet, or around the house, having the confidence to get close is amazing.
Our lives are better together with Smart Mouth. Just 2 rinses a day. It means fresh breath for 24 hours.
Find it at your favorite drug, grocery, or supercenter store, or save 20% at smartmouth.com/.
Grab your family and watch the 2022 iHeartRadio Music Awards Red Carpet Live, presented by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services.
I want to see everybody. Shout out to all who got vaccinated, got your kids vaccinated.
So events like this are safer and just more enjoyable for all.
Live stream the exclusive Red Carpet pre-show March 22nd at 7, 6 Central on iHeartRadio's Facebook and YouTube channel.
Thank you guys so much.
Find vaccines near you at vaccines.gov.
Wesley had IRS troubles.
They told me I owed them $43,000.
It got really bad.
Coming after my house, my car. I seriously thought that I was going to lose everything.
Wesley called Optima Tax Relief.
Oh, they were great people. Optima Tax. They know what they're doing.
Optima Tax Relief came through with flying colors.
I saved an incredible amount of money. Call Optima Tax Relief. Don't trust anybody else.
Call Optima for a free consultation. Call 800-783-8055. 800-783-8055.
Optima Tax Relief.
For details, visit OptimaTaxRelief.com.
News on the hour and a half. Traffic and weather all day. Keeping you informed and up to date. El Paso's News Radio, 690 KTSM.
In 50 feet, turn left. Why are you driving so slowly?
After a few drinks, I'm taking it slow.
Well, you're not fooling the cop behind you.
What?
Get ready to pay in 0.1 miles.
Getting pulled over for buzz driving could cost you around $10,000 in fines, legal fees, and increased insurance rates. Nothing kills a buzz like getting pulled over for buzz driving, because buzz driving is drunk driving. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
News Radio 690 KTSM El Paso.
Even as things are continuing to evolve around the world, and I've even been looking at some of my travel plans and whether they're going to be realistic or not into the near or short term or even medium term future here, something that I can rely on because it's locally based is Enhanced Flavors, your local source for over 40 quality flavored olive oils and balsamic vinegars, because even if you can't get around the world or are wondering about the availability of doing so, you can still definitely take your taste buds and experience the flavors that the world has to offer. And they're going to be back out in the community here coming up in the coming weekends, specifically at the Upper Valley Farmers Market these next coming Sundays, both this one and the one after. That's on Mesa near Crossroads in the Hobby Lobby parking lot. Visited that myself the other day, and it is packed out there. A lot of people eager to get out there. So if you really want to try some great flavors from around the world, get you from your local source, because their olive oils are imported from Tunisia, Italy, Greece, and Spain, and all the balsamic vinegars are, of course, imported from the Modena province of Italy. Some of the great ones I've tried, one of the ones my family likes best is actually their dark balsamic vinegar, Mediterranean honey fig, and pistachio blend, because it works great with, well, a lot of stuff you may be cooking, and even in other surprising ways. So you can find them online at enhancedflavors.com. That's enhancedflavors with es.com. Or again, find them out at the Upper Valley Farmers Market this coming Sunday, the 20th, out there at the Hobby Lobby parking lot. Again, enhancedflavors.com.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in however you may be doing so, on air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the social media pages, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. We got John Browston, Calvin Williams, Michael Perez, Raul Amaya, and more. John Hurts, Dottie Butler Tardis, among others, tuning in, chiming in over there. Also a little bit of love being shown by Michael Robert Tipton. You want to drop a like or a share or a follow, all those things are more than appreciated on those locations. Or if you're just sitting back and enjoying the show, we'll open up those phone lines a little bit later. If you're wanting to stay terrestrial, no shame in that. And if anything, it's also very much encouraged, as we're talking about a lot of the impact we're seeing out of the continuing conflict in Ukraine. A lot of talk happening within, well, a lot of national legislatures lately, trying to catch as many of those speeches as I can, because I find the presentation of them very telling and interesting. A couple of common refrains, but some specific things, on not a clip that we played here, but another one of the translated statements from Zelensky in that joint address to Congress was the I Have a Dream speech. Also, something he did before the parliament address that he made was referencing Churchill's, we will fight them on the beaches, we will fight them in the landing areas, we will fight them on the everywhere kind of thing. That statement, I'm not quite quoting it correctly, but harkening back to that speech in his address there, continually calling for that no-fly zone. Some response already coming in today, of course, from some of our regional elected officials, including Congressman Tony Gonzalez for the Texas 23rd Congressional District, that one that includes an increasing area of El Paso County. So if you were at all surprised at the ballot box about you being involved in that one, would behoove you to take a look at the district map as they now exist. But he was saying a little bit earlier today, Congress witnessed an incredibly powerful address from President Zelensky today. The aid he is asking for is the difference between life and death for the Ukrainian people. I believe the most powerful actions the United States can take are continued economic sanctions and implementation of a no-fly zone over Western Ukraine to support a humanitarian corridor. The United States and Congress will be pivotal during this in turning the tide of the war, and we must move forward with unwavering support for Ukraine. Also added in the note here from the release, Congressman Gonzalez visited Ukraine in August, meeting with local officials and veteran groups. He served 2 decades in the U.S. Navy as a cryptologist. Interesting line there. The reason I wanted to bring it up actually is because the idea of a total no-fly zone has been, again, pretty roundly rejected both by the U.S. leadership and NATO in general because of the immediate implications of escalation. We've talked about it a little bit before, and I find not much analysis going on to it, but I'm definitely sticking with the idea that anyone, and I mean anyone in any other country that is wondering about how to best guard their sovereignty is probably out of this conflict going to be looking straight at WMD's nuclear best, but any kind is probably going to be seen, particularly in your crackpot, tin pot kind of variety of leaders, as better than nothing. So I think this is going to be, regardless of how this ends, an incredibly destabilizing international event. There's a lot more implications involving China that come out of this too, so we will get into there. RJ saying, according to the UN map, Russia hasn't invaded nobody. Gotta disagree with you on that, because Ukraine, last I check, is absolutely a sovereign country that, had its own memberships in a lot of different organizations, and the seeking of membership to NATO being much cited as one of the contributing factors to this whole conflict here. But something that is, of course, happening here. Okay, just to finish up here with Tony Gonzalez, actually, the idea of a limited no-fly zone, specifically calling for it here over Western Ukraine to support humanitarian corridor. Not sure if there would be a ton more appetite for that kind of a situation, but it's an interesting potential avenue. I mean, there is so much developing with these constantly, and I do have to say that depending on how the actual, situation on the ground continues to evolve, we will see changes in the policies. I mean, we've heard a lot about the preparedness or lack thereof of Russian forces in Ukraine and what that might mean for their continued prosecution of this conflict, for the state of Ukrainian forces, or the lack thereof as well, in being able to defend this, the supplies that may be trying to get to them or may not be able to anymore as Russia is seeking to further expand its conflict to that western area. But really, I mean, as much as I dislike it, what I fully expect to happen is that as the situation on the ground evolves, if we see a weakening of the Russian position and a, frankly, much improving of the Ukrainian response, that would actually make it easier to put in the no-fly zone, in my mind, because if there's less chance of conflict, then that would make it, more palatable at the very least, if it seems like there's a flagging bit of support or flagging interest in the conflict from Russian leadership, which you can read the tea leaves a million different ways. But okay, one of the more specific things we are seeing in not quite our area, I haven't tried any local reports yet, but along the southern border in general, more Ukrainian war refugees reaching the southern U.S. border, which at the very least is going to complicate things to put it mildly, because, of course, we have the ongoing crisis at the border. I still don't get the partisan bickering over that word when we have, even over last year, with the, how does Todd Bensman put it, 2.5 million persons. I prefer the term encounters because, I mean, it kind of, to say that's 2.5 million people kind of hides the true impact of the situation, because if you're dealing with the same person multiple times, this is often more accurately represented by that 2 million plus number. He's again citing it from Inauguration Day more specifically. It just means that it's almost that much more demoralizing. It would be for me anyway, as a person on the ground dealing with this, to think that the efforts are literally just being rendered undone the very next moment, the next day, or the next time this person shows up. So that's, again, it almost hides the true impact of that situation. But in the midst of this, if we then have what has otherwise been in the local area of the Ukrainian border and Poland, for the most part, a well-received situation further complicate what we're seeing on the ground here. Because, of course, if we're talking about asylum law, much has been talked about in the previous administration and this current administration when it comes to what is the purpose of asylum and what is allowed. And Bensman, in his article, points out that there is very likelihood some of the policies that have been either continued on or re-implemented under this current administration when it comes to, safe secondary country or those kind of situations, that if it's not applied as equally to Ukrainian refugees as it is to anyone else seeking to cross the border, it would either conflate the situation, make it confusing, or very much maybe inflame it even further. Because you're dealing with groups unequally, not exactly his words, but more my reading of the situation, it could definitely cause confusion. And, well, we've all been very familiar with that. The marketing attempts on the parts of the cartels and the coyotes have very much benefited from any kind of ambiguity. The idea that, well, no, this is what they have to say, but no, you should really give us $10,000 and sell literally everything that you own in order to make this trek, because it'll be totally worth it. This is what they actually mean. Here, read this other statement, or look at this other clip, or see, this is what they totally said. I mean, they don't need any help in that department, and would still really love to see more international enforcement efforts on them. But as has been pointed out, Interpol isn't exactly a concept that would really apply here, and that falls almost entirely on the Mexican government otherwise, which has its own issues, to say the very least here. Calvin Williams putting it as Biden has brought 70% of the country together against his administration. Yeah, the polling numbers, I would say there's definitely feeling more unity, and even if there are questions about and everything that you see about it coming out of Ukrainian conflict is probably filtered through someone's lens of how they want you to react to it, by which I mean there's propaganda on both sides. It's obvious if you take a little slightly deeper look at it. But more specifically, that he hasn't really seen a boost in ratings numbers that you might, now this is a usual conflict, but you might usually expect to see when there's, well, talk of war and war footing afoot. And I think a lot of people are very sympathetic to the Ukrainian situation, even if there are reasonable questions that exist about the situation in the Ukraine before even this moment. I think the idea of, to reference something else, a big country invading a small country, claiming that it's totally justified, doesn't sit well with a whole lot of people, as it, in my mind, very, very much should. Because, yeah, there's a lot of words that I want to use that I can't in this format, but well, maybe if we ever meet up at a bar or something one day, I'll get those off my chest, because, yeah, it's not good. And frankly, as has been put here, John Browson said a little bit earlier, I think is a good way to reference it. World War III ready to start. When Russia obtains control of Ukraine, either Russia or China will do something else that can't be allowed to stand. I've said it a lot of times before, and I think it definitely applies here. History doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes. And the whole Czechoslovakian situation, the Sudetenland, and though the Rhinelands, all of that seems very similar to what might be happening. Capitulation rarely results in anything positive for those that are making the concession. So I think a statement that was made a lot, particularly during the height of the global war on terror, which of course has been winding down for a minute now, or even very rapidly in some cases, such as Afghanistan, the idea of we have to fight them over there so that we don't have to fight them here is becoming a very real concept. Got a little bit nebulous at some of the height of that particular, effort, the global war on terror. But I think right here, it's very apparent to even casual observers that if they are able to just, that is Russia in this case, just steamroll through this, get exactly what they want, very much not going to be sated. The ease, specifically of the effort, I think is what is at issue here. Because if they are able to just move through, accomplish their goals with almost, they're already not there, but from this point on, able to get exactly what they want without breaking a sweat, that's just going to make them think, wonder what else we could do. The whole speed bump theory about the Baltic states that we've talked about previously and what that might mean for them is a very real one and will affect, I think, geopolitics for better part of the next decade, if not further out, depending on how things go here. Already due for that next break. Coming out of the break, we'll talk more about this, but also another part of those border issues with the opioid crisis. What are local officials prepared to do? We'll get into that and a whole lot more. Body cams, a lot of interconnected subjects, but more after this break with more Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Justin Cree with your CBS 4 News Update. According to CBP, the agency is on pace to set a record this fiscal year when it comes to encounters at the border. Since October, Border Patrol reports that it has seen more than 167,000 undocumented migrants every month attempting to cross the border wall, which is nearly 30,000 more encounters the agency saw compared to last year's monthly average. These record-breaking numbers also come with a familiar problem at border crossings. CBP says the number of unaccompanied children showing up along the border went up 37% from January to February. A fourth COVID-19 shot for people over 65 could soon be available across the borderland. Pfizer submitted an application for emergency use authorization from the FDA for a second booster shot. Pfizer says it's continuing to collect data and talk with researchers about a vaccine strategy and whether a fourth dose will be needed. With your CBS 4 News Update, I'm Justin Cree.
News Radio 690. Traffic all day.
Severe Weather Center, this is Chief Meteorologist Sandra Diaz. We've got our next front coming in, and that means increasing winds through tonight as well as for your Thursday. The areas that will be hit the hardest with the strongest of the wind gusts will be on the east side areas of the mountain ranges. Also, with that next system, we'll see a drop in temperatures, almost about 10 to 15 degrees cooler for your Thursday afternoon.
This report is sponsored by Wendy's Breakfast, now with a free drink with any breakfast sandwich purchase. The number one pick is in. Wendy's Breakfast, the official breakfast of March Madness. Choose your starting lineup, like the Breakfast Baconator or Honey Butter Chicken Biscuit, and enjoy oven-baked bacon, fresh cracked eggs, seasoned breakfast potatoes, and Simply OJ. Choose wisely, choose Wendy's.
Hey, El Paso, this is Ivan Ochoa, General Manager from Sunland Park, Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram, Fiat. We've extended Ram truck months, and deals are even bigger and better. With 0% interest, more for your trade, huge savings, and a huge selection of new and certified pre-owned vehicles, with more arriving daily.
Buy now and get huge savings during Ram Truck Month at Sunland Park Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram, Fiat. Save thousands in interest with 0 APR for 72 months on the all-new 2022 Jeep Wagoneer, full-size SUV with third-row seating. 2022 Ram trucks with 0 APR for 72 months. 0 down, 0 payments for 90 days. Upside down on your trade? We want it. Even if you owe thousands more than it's worth, we've partnered with even more aggressive lenders with great rates and terms for good credit, or even if your credit is less than perfect. All military personnel and all first responders receive an additional discount. Thank you for your service. Sunland Park Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram, Fiat. Where buying your truck is fun. At I-10 at Sunland Park Drive or online at sunlandparkdodge.com. Estamos en tu esquina, El Paso, El Paso Strong. Excludes factory rebate at dealer discount plus TTNL. 0 APR is $13.89 per thousand finance. On select vehicles with approved credit. Offers not combined.
I love when my friends stop by, but to help keep my friends and my family safe, I always spray Lysol in my home before guests arrive and again after they leave. Nothing kills more viruses on more surfaces than Lysol disinfectant spray. Lysol, what it takes to protect. Use as directed.
I bought football tickets for my husband's birthday, and now I'm in a football bubble. All I see online are articles and ads about football. I hate feeling manipulated. I downloaded DuckDuckGo and saw a difference right away. Take back your privacy online with DuckDuckGo. Privacy simplified.
This report is sponsored by DuckDuckGo. Protect your privacy for free with DuckDuckGo.
Imagine being denied an apartment because of housing discrimination.
It's so wrong. But who has the power to stop this?
You do. The law is on your side. If you've been discriminated against because of race, color, religion, sex, national origin, disability, or familial status, file a complaint with HUD. Fair housing is your right.
Use it.
Visit HUD.gov/fair housing, a public service message from HUD and the National Fair Housing Alliance.
El Paso's News Radio, 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Talking a lot about big concepts here today and a lot of response coming in here already. Calvin Williams on the whole Ukrainian situation. People upset there is no fly. Tell me one time in history that a non-occupying force enforced a no-fly zone. In general, I think you're accurate, though. I do recall Libya to an extent, but that was also in support of on-the-ground forces here. So it's not totally impossible, but the scale we're discussing here is completely different, of course, from Libya or anywhere else that it's been put forth. I guess kind of Bosnia, Serbia, that level of conflict here, but the effectiveness therein, you might remember that there was the stealth jet of the moment at that point, the F-111 Nightbird was taken down during that. So effectiveness without ground level support is debatable and militarily dubious, among other things here, but a whole lot more that we'll get into here because, of course, we're talking about local impacts come from all of this, even though we're looking at the border for the potential impact of Ukrainian refugees arriving potentially even within our area if they've already made it to any section of the border. This, of course, has been more than a little bit of debate in our area. And RJ does point out very accurately, a no-fly zone is World War III. Yeah, to put it more popularly, you just bought a war if that were to be implemented in any of the current situations. I don't think it's out of the question, but any persecution of such an endeavor, I mean, it's not just we declared a no-fly zone, everyone's fine with it. You got to be prepared to shoot someone down that is violating that, and I think that there wouldn't be much of a better gift that could be given outside of military impacts and the idea of nukes flying, which if anyone had nostalgia for the 50s and the whole duck and cover thing, I hope you're cured of that for right now, because to deal with and actually enforce it and make it not a laughing stock, I mean, involves the willingness to do that. And then more specifically, couldn't think of almost a better rhetorical or propaganda give to the Putin administration and regime overall right now than to say, oh, by the way, they're totally attacking us, because it doesn't take a genius to see that is exactly how it's going to go over with their own public. And so even if there has been protests going on and not a whole lot of information in the Russian Republic itself, as near as can be told, this one, going to war tends to cause some unification, even if it's not totally working out that way domestically in the U.S. But that's kind of a larger subject here. One thing I want to talk about is we've been discussing a bit on El Paso Police Department, the equipment going on. Of course, El Paso City Council passed this week of increasing the budget to allow for the installment of body cams within, those on-duty members of the police. But something that has been otherwise investigated here, may have mentioned it yesterday. If not, here's the introduction to it. El Paso Matters has been doing an in-depth review of narcan supplies within the El Paso Police Department because, of course, a lot of talk happening nationally, statewide, and even within this governor's race about, of course, fentanyl, the impacts of it, the overdose deaths. I mean, within that, I believe 18 to 48, if I'm not totally mistaken, somewhere in that range. The number one cause of death and the supply of it is absolutely important in stymieing that side of it. But if you're not also then looking at the response side of it, literally missing half the story. And so something that has been delved into here specifically by El Paso Matters reporter Renee Klazik has been talking about, what is available for it. And that essentially what it comes down to is that for the more than 1,000 member officers of the El Paso Police Department, that there are roughly 80 or so doses of Narcan kits, better way to put it, available at any given time. So that this is the drug that allows for the more or less immediate reversal, or near as immediate reversal, of a opiate overdose. if need be, and usually best kept on hand, but as has been getting reported on here, that's something that is not totally widely available, because even if it hasn't been as much of a focus within our area, we are certainly not immune to this crisis of its own way, shape, and form. Far too often does it get thought of as, hey, we're just a transit corridor. None of the issues that originate in the border and then go elsewhere really touch us here, which could not be further from the truth when it comes to any of these issues. When you're talking about border security, when you're talking about refugees, when you're talking about illegal immigration, when you're talking about the smuggling, the human trafficking, and of course the drugs themselves. And so the idea of there not being more available with it is a little bit disturbing when you think about it, because, I mean, even just the impacts of it, I mean, how many talking points have been out there about the impact of fentanyl and how even just touching a small amount of it, if you find yourself in contact with, even accidental, because sure, as Michael Pettis is putting it, narcan, what a way to ruin a good high, would not exactly call this good in any way, shape, or form, because yeah, I do think it has some impacts below an overdose. And a critical factor is that it can be administered pretty prophylactically, almost, as if it's almost even suspected to be, because it does have any interaction with anything outside of opioids in any major situation. I'm sure there's some small sliver of possibility of other things, but I mean, the whole idea of a harm reduction approach, we've talked a little bit about this. A lot of backlash happened to that idea out of some of the national stuff here, but let's focus locally here at the moment. The idea of having enough available to be essentially equipping units, because otherwise what's been reported on is that really we have to wait until the fire department shows up. So if police are the first on the scene, they have to wait until more detailed medical help comes up, and minutes, seconds matter when it comes to that kind of overdosing. Now, I have never partaken of opioids or fentanyl or anything like that, but I find the idea of it being readily available as probably a pretty good idea, because even with the instability we're seeing in the world, whether or not there's more demand being asked for it is debatable, but I do think that being a little bit more proactive about it would probably be a very good idea, because, well, it could happen to you or me, even if we don't think we're involved in it. I mean, the counterfeit stuff that is coming across, because it's not even just we're trying to make the illicit drugs we're already selling stronger, but, the counterfeiting that comes along with it, and the idea of, we're trying to boost what we're trying to offer to make more money off it, because that's the ultimate goal of these cartels, make no mistake, is to make more money. They want to bilk as much as possible. So if they got this idea that, we only have to put a bit of this in it and we don't have to waste our actually good stuff, otherwise they don't care about the impact to you and me, the individual person, as long as they're still making their money. So I think it's a very important bit of reporting. Again, you can find it over on the El Paso Matters site for yourself if you want to read the 3-part series that they have of it, because I mean, I know there's a lot of debate and discussion out there about, okay, should this be available? Are we just supporting the issue here? But again, I find the idea of, in a crisis, saving someone's life and then dealing with it on the back end when it comes to charges, therapy, treatment, those important kind of things, probably the better way to do it. Because if we're truly going to say that this is a national epidemic, and even within our state, an epidemic, and is one of the leading causes of death, we should probably be doing more about it locally here. So greatly appreciative of that reporting and the issues coming out with it here. So these are some of the issues affecting us here in the borderland today, and the interconnected nature of them has rarely been more on display, I do have to say, because, of course, the fentanyl and the otherwise illicit narcotics and opioids specifically that are coming across, probably going to get even further brought into the whole border situation that we are dealing with, even as it gets more complicated with the Ukrainian refugees and the impacts coming out of the Ukrainian conflict, all very much connected here. So that's going to take us down to our next break of the hour. So with that, we'll go ahead and open up those phone lines, as we do usually during this part of the show. So if you wanted to call in, that number to do so, 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. Back after this break with more Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690
Watch for a disabled vehicle blocking the right shoulder I-10 westbound at Lomaland. An injury accident, Lomaland at Vista del Sol. You could take Pelicano or Lee Trevino to get around it. Police responding to an accident McRae Boulevard northbound at Wedgwood. And an injury accident with EMS on the scene at Piedras at Pershing Drive. Montana Avenue or Alabama Street can be alternates to avoid the slowing there. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
This report is sponsored by DuckDuckGo. Protect your privacy for free with DuckDuckGo.
I bought football tickets for my husband's birthday, and now I'm in a football bubble. All I see online are articles and ads about football. I hate feeling manipulated. I downloaded DuckDuckGo and saw a difference right away. Take back your privacy online with DuckDuckGo. Privacy simplified.
Anyone can get long COVID, even Caitlin, age 20.
I got COVID in November 2020. In January, I started having long-term problems. I was a varsity soccer player in high school, and now I get winded just from walking. I can't remember things. It's just unbearable.
Getting vaccinated against COVID-19 is the best way to prevent long COVID. Find vaccines near you at vaccines.gov. Paid for by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services.
Do you promise to love, honor, and cherish, forsaking all others?
I do.
I do.
And now, by the power vested in me, I now pronounce you roommates. Go forth.
That's not the vow you took. But if struggles with CPAP have you and your spouse sleeping in separate rooms, it might be time to look into Inspire. Inspire works inside the body with just the click of a remote. That's right, just a button. No mask, no hose, just sleep. Inspire. Sleep apnea innovation.
Talk to your doctor to see if Inspire is right for you. Review important safety information at inspiresleep.com.
What's done more to improve overall health and wellness? Modern medicine or personal hygiene? Actually, it's both. But considering that bathing went mainstream in the 1800s and brushing your teeth in the 1900s, isn't it time for something new, like cleaning your nose? After all, your nose is the body's air filter for trapping dirt and germs, the first line of defense against allergens, bacteria, and viruses from getting into your lungs. But how do you clean your nose? With Navage. Navage isn't medicine, it's more like plumbing. Navage uses powered suction to pull saline in one nostril to the very back of the nose where germs can get trapped and multiply, and then out the other nostril, flushing out mucus and microbes so you can breathe better, sleep deeper, snore less, and stay healthier. Join over 2 million others and find out for yourself how refreshing and easy to use Navage is. At Navage.com, Walgreens, CVS, Rite Aid, Bed Bath, and Target. Navage. Clean nose, healthy life.
Are you covered by Medicare and Medicaid? Well, El Paso Health Plus is the plan for you. As a local Medicare Advantage plan, we can offer our members more. Call us at 833-742-3125 or EPHMedicare.com. El Paso Health Plus.
NexGard, a Foxalaner, is monthly flea and tick protection that's #1 vet recommended and #1 dog preferred. Use with caution in dogs with a history of seizures or neurologic disorders. Ask your vet or visit nextguardfordogs.com to learn more.
News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. A lot we're talking about here today. Ukrainian conflict and the impacts from it, the ones that we're already starting to see here in the borderland. Of course, gas prices have been talked about quite a lot, even if, as our guest yesterday was talking about, a little bit deeper than just the current situation and a little bit more structural, perhaps. A lot more we can get into on that, but even then, border issues that are being caused by it or further impacted by it, I guess would be a better way to put it. And then, of course, the drug issues, the security issues, all of that here. Just a couple of bits of local reporting on here from our news partners over at KFOX 14. Border Patrol agents encountered several migrants with extensive criminal histories. In the first 2 weeks of March, U.S. Border Patrol agents in El Paso sector encountered more than 13 migrants with extensive criminal records and gang affiliations. I really don't get any argument involving border issues read large as security, immigration, trade, travel, transit, all of these important phrases. That doesn't include a hefty bit of the security here. I mean, I was pleasantly surprised that it ended up in the State of the Union speech, but what actually comes out of it, some money coming out of the budget that has, I believe, now been signed. If not, it was already on the way to the desk here. I think it has, as of last check. But yeah, there's more than a little bit that needs to be focused on there, because the idea of it not being very least known, even if you're not saying, okay, whatever we do with the people that then end up in the country, if it's not at least known, that just is a giant question mark that no one's been able to justify to me not being focused on here. So, so a lot of focus on some of these issues as well. John Brazelton bringing up the gas prices and all of those kind of things. And, oh, yeah, John, there we go. Gas gets anywhere close to $10 per gallon. The midterms will be a total disaster for the Dems. I'm not sure it's not going to be anyway, because let's be honest, there's been a lot of, it was expected to be a bloodbath as it was, and whether or not this whole current Ukrainian situation is going to be the distraction that some in political seats that might be a little bit contentious are worried about. Yeah, I don't think it's going to work out with them, though Calvin Williams agreeing with that. Yes, it's closer to $10 a gallon. People won't even be able to vote by putting it there. But there's a lot more to get to it in here. A lot of comments coming in. So if you wanted to do that, comments over there on the social media. But we also have that phone line open. Again, the number to call there, 915-544-5876, 544 KTSM. Do have Harry on the east side here with us right now. Harry, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, Andrew, good afternoon. Good afternoon, El Paso. What a beautiful day we've had.
Mm-hmm.
I'm putting my thoughts together for the open line Friday call regarding the Ukraine situation. All the death and destruction disturbs me, because I've seen it before, and when you've seen the naked and the dead, it has a different effect on you. But anyway, I want to make a few comments about our great city here in El Paso.
Sure.
And I know for a fact that if you listen to KTSM and you watch the local newscasts, you will certainly get all the information regarding the city of El Paso and the changes that take place. I just wanted to mention that. You mentioned the police body cams.
Yes.
That is supposed to be fully functional, Andrew, by the summer of next year, 2023. And the cost is $6 million.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if you had mentioned the fact that they've already allocated the money and paid for it or not. I didn't quite get that.
I believe so. City Council yesterday voted to use that $6.6 million worth, specifically coming out of the American Rescue Plan, funding 4 cameras. So I don't believe the purchases have happened already. The city's cost of that will be $165,000, nearly $166,000, and then also a state grant of just under $500,000 will also be going into that.
The other thing that I wanted to mention is they're talking now, the city is talking about a remodeling and reconstruction, a proposed downtown portion of I-10.
Oh, yes. Mm-hmm.
And they showed the artist's rendition of it, and it looks like it would be very nice. And they've estimated the cost to be $600 million. And they've also indicated, which surprised me, that they're talking about the state of Texas was going to fund that project. And I found that kind of hard to believe, but who knows what's in store. And the other thing I want to comment on is the water treatment facility in the Lower Valley. And of course, the History Channel, you folks talked immensely, greatly about that, the water situation in El Paso.
Mm-hmm.
And now they're talking about they are able to turn the water down there in the treatment facility and the water from the river into processed drinking water.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't quite get the cost of that. I believe it was $200 million. And the claim to that, Andrew, was that the federal government was going to fund part of that or most of it. Now, I have a suspicion that the cost of these projects, my epilogue on it would be to hold on to your hat and your wallet, and that the taxes would be going up across the city. For some of that, it has to. And as a growing city, as a very prosperous city that we are now here in El Paso, and if you come out to the east side and see the amazing work being done on our highways out here, it seems it's endless. But I just wanted to make comments on that.
I will say about that downtown section, yeah, some of the renderings were discussed before City Council, but more specifically reported on the El Paso Times and others here, their front page, that El Paso City Council on Tuesday voted 6-1 in favor, sending a resolution to the Texas Department of Transportation to consider alternate designs for the state's Reimagine I-10 project because of those expected impacts to the downtown portion. We've had some guests on the show before, both from TxDOT and then from the Sunset Heights Neighborhood Association, talking about their very serious concerns about what the widening, particularly through that downtown trench corridor, could mean. So we'll see what comes from that. I guess my understanding is that a lot of the money coming for that will be from state funds. There might be some local matching or percentages that go into it. So whether or not local taxes have to go up for that will remain to be said. We're all paying for it, make no mistake. But whether or not it actually goes forward as totally envisioned kind of remains a question in my mind. We'll see how much impact this request and this resolution being sent off will have.
Okay, the historical district around the UTEP area there, they normally get everything they want in construction and restoration. And don't forget, our friend Beto lives in that area, so we got to take care of that area. So,
well, we'll see what happens there. Well, I do appreciate the point and the call. You have a good one.
Thank you.
All right, we got to take that next break right now, but coming out of the break, we'll get to more calls and more comments on the line here because there's a lot more to get to. Of course, here, coming up on the second hour of the program here. So again, if you're wanting to call in, that number to do so, 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. We'll get you on the line there, but otherwise, we'll talk to you back on the other side of the top of the hour news here with more Talk El Paso. Stay tuned.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
Watch for a crash reported I-10 westbound near the Sun Bowl Road. Sean Haggerty eastbound at Gateway Boulevard. An accident reported there. You could take Rushing or McCombs as alternates. Loma Land at Vista del Sol, site of an injury accident with EMS on the scene. And medical and police on the scene of another accident. McRae and Wedgwood, Acer Avenue or Springwood Drive could be alternates. Kerry Edwards, El Paso traffic.
Hey, El Paso, this is Ivan Ochoa, General Manager from Sunland Park, Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram, Fiat. We've extended Ram truck months and deals are even bigger and better with 0% interest, more for your trade, huge savings, and a huge selection of new and certified pre-owned vehicles with more arriving daily.
Buy now and get huge savings during Ram Truck Month at Sunland Park Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram, Fiat. Save thousands in interest with 0 APR for 72 months on the all-new 2022 Jeep Wagoneer, full-size SUV with third-row seating. 2022 Ram trucks with 0 APR for 72 months. 0 down, 0 payments for 90 days. Upside down on your trade? We want it. Even if you owe thousands more than it's worth, we've partnered with even more aggressive lenders with great rates and terms for good credit, or even if your credit is less than perfect. All military personnel and all first responders receive an additional discount. Thank you for your service. Sunland Park Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram, Fiat. Where buying your truck is fun. At I-10 at Sunland Park Drive or online at sunlandparkdodge.com. Estamos en tu esquina, El Paso Strong. Excludes factory rebate at dealer discount plus TTNL. 0 APRs, $13.89 per thousand finance. On select vehicles with approved credit. Offers not combined.
Want to know what I like best about high school sports? I love watching my son run on the field. I love seeing him smile when he high-fives his teammates. I love seeing his eyes light up when his team scores a goal. I love the fact that since he's been playing high school sports, he's making better decisions. And I love knowing that high school sports have never been safer. Why? Because coaches have more information than they've ever had. Training techniques are more sophisticated, and equipment has never been more advanced. Playing high school sports isn't just safe. It's still the best way to give your teenager a healthy head start in life. And that's something I really love.
This message about the value of high school sports is presented by the Texas University Interscholastic League and the Texas High School Athletic Directors Association.
Children who grow up in poverty are part of a destructive cycle. At Child Fund International, we find this unacceptable. In 25 countries, we are vigorously fighting poverty and improving the lives of children and their families. Learn more at childfund.org.
There won't be much substance on your news feed until you add us. Just like us or click on the link. News at KTSMradio.com. Traffic and weather all day. News Radio 690 is KTSM AM El Paso, an iHeart radio station.
NBC News Radio, I'm Brian Shook. President Biden is unveiling more U.S. aid to Ukraine.
An additional $800 million in assistance. That brings the total of new U.S. security assistance to Ukraine to $1 billion.
Speaking at the White House, Biden said the additional security assistance to Ukraine primarily covers military weaponry, including drones. Biden's remarks followed a virtual speech by Ukraine's president to members of Congress. President Zelensky pleaded for more U.S. aid as his nation struggles with the ongoing Russian invasion. President Biden says oil prices are decreasing and gas prices should drop as well. Press Secretary Jen Psaki followed up by adding, if gas retailers' costs are going down, they need to immediately pass those savings on to consumers. Psaki argued the Russian invasion and volatility in global oil markets are no excuse for excessive price increases, profit padding, or any effort to exploit American consumers. Americans may be dealing with several more rate hikes in the future after seeing the first hike in over 3 years today. The Federal Reserve is hinting at 6 more rate hikes, which may come at the 6 remaining meetings the central bank will hold. 5 people are being charged by the Department of Justice for spying on U.S. residents.
The DOJ said the individual spied on Chinese nationals living in the U.S. who expressed pro-democracy views on behalf of the People's Republic of China's secret police. 3 of the 5 suspects were arrested in New York, while the other 2 remain at large. 3 cases involving the suspects are currently being investigated by the FBI. The charges the accused face carry maximum prison sentences of 5 years. I'm Lisa Taylor.
Former President Trump is hinting that former Vice President Pence would not be his running mate in 2024. In an interview with the Washington Examiner, Trump said he doesn't think people would accept Pence as his running mate. You're listening to the latest from NBC News Radio. New details are emerging about the alleged killer of several homeless people. Liz Warner has more.
30-year-old Gerald Brevard was arrested in Washington, D.C. Tuesday. He's accused of attacks on at least 5 homeless individuals in both New York City and Washington, 2 of whom died. Both the suspect's father and grandfather say he suffered from mental illness that went unaddressed. His grandfather reported his grandson was also homeless for a time. He's already facing charges for prior incidents in multiple jurisdictions and had been scheduled to appear in a Virginia court this week for violating an earlier probation.
A new report says up to 400 manatees have died so far this year. The Florida Fish and Wildlife Commission says there were 430 deaths last year at this time. The state set a record last year with a total of 1,100 manatee deaths. Officials say algae blooms and pollution are killing seagrass in Indian River Lagoon, causing the manatees to starve to death. A group of airline pilots is suing the CDC, challenging the mask mandate on flights. Rory O'Neill reports.
10 pilots from 4 airlines are suing the CDC over the COVID mask mandate, saying it's unconstitutional and unsafe. The pilots are challenging the legality of the order and also say the mask mandate is the reason behind thousands of complaints of unruly passengers. The mask requirement is in effect until at least April 18th, following a recent extension by the TSA. More than a dozen lawsuits have been filed challenging mask mandates, but this may be the first by airline workers.
Mike Tyson is launching a product to honor one of his most notable fights. On Tuesday, Tyson's cannabis brand, Tyson 2.0, announced ear-shaped marijuana edibles, complete with a missing chunk. The gummies are a nod to the 1997 bite fight, where Tyson bit off a piece of Evander Holyfield's ear. As a result, Tyson was fined $3 million and had his boxing license revoked. Brian Shook, NBC News Radio.
Celebrate the music you loved listening to all year.
Plus, your favorite artist will take home iHeartRadio Music Awards.
Don't miss our 2022 iHeartRadio Music Awards.
Watch exclusively on Fox.
This Tuesday night at 7.
We're all looking forward to getting back to real-life moments. Thanks to COVID vaccines that help prevent severe illness, we can do this. The U.S. Department of Health and Human Services is proud to help celebrate the iHeartRadio Music Awards. Visit vaccines.gov today.
This report is sponsored by DuckDuckGo. Protect your privacy for free with DuckDuckGo.
I feel like I'm being haunted by a pair of headphones. Everywhere I go is a creepy ad for headphones I looked at one time. I hate that feeling like I'm being watched. I downloaded DuckDuckGo and saw a difference right away. Take back your privacy online with DuckDuckGo. Privacy simplified.
Hey, Mario Courtney Lopez here. We know life's moments are definitely better together.
And Smart Mouth mouthwash gives us the confidence to always be ready to make the most of these moments.
Whether in studio, on the red carpet, or around the house, having the confidence to get close is amazing.
Our lives are better together with Smart Mouth. Just 2 rinses a day means fresh breath for 24 hours.
Find it at your favorite drug, grocery, or supercenter store, or save 20% at smartmouth.com/radio.
No Hollywood release can match it.
It's worth the wait. Who complains?
No television drama can equal it.
That was the scariest episode of your show.
And nothing else comes close to the drama.
This is unbelievable.
And you know what? Quite frankly, this scares people.
Join the conversation. We have seen this movie before. We know that it doesn't end well.
Stay informed with El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Text and work. Text and pretend to work. Text and act surprised when someone calls you out for not working. Who, me? Text and whatever, just don't text and drive. Visit StopTextsStopWrecks.org. A message from NHTSA and the Ad Council.
News Radio 690 KTSM El Paso.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. You're locked in for hour 2 here of the program, our 5 o'clock hour. A lot more to talk to, a lot more to get to, but of course we got a lot more discussion happening as well, as we do have those phone lines open, full up at the moment, but the number to call there, 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. Get some more of these issues we're discussing here. I mean, just a couple of the top ones today. The Ukrainian address by the Ukrainian president before the joint session of Congress. Interesting in what the, results of it may be. More interesting, more I should put. And whatever is going to be happening over in that conflict and what it means here and the continuing impacts we keep seeing when it comes to resources, supplies, some looking at potential increases in domestic wheat supplies as producers ramp up, but whether or not that's a real solution to the international situation, well, a little bit dubious, but stuff like that going on, and then Ukrainian refugees showing up here, the increasing issues that come with the border crisis, drug smuggling, human smuggling, all that stuff here. So we'll get a lot to it here, but some of the issues coming up, comments coming in over on the social media, because of course you can comment throughout the show, even if you can't get through on the line there, over on our social media, facebook.com/Talk El Paso is probably the main one. Near as we come to it anyway. That's where the Skeptic Squad lives, and a lot of comments come in, such as from Michael Perez, RJ, John Brazelton, Calvin Williams, and more if you're wanting to tune in or chime in over there. Matt Olson as well. Interesting comment coming in from John Brazelton on the I-10 discussion, that I-10 is a national interstate from Florida to California and back. It doesn't belong to the El Paso City Council, so just build a workable interstate through the downtown area. I mean, there are some redesign aspects that are under more or less state control. So really, I mean, they're asking TxDOT to take it into consideration, but I wouldn't be surprised if legal challenges, particularly from the neighborhood association or residents, that may be eminent domained out of it, because some of the designs, you may recall, include essentially blowing away everything just south of Yandle and in between that land piece, in between Yandle and I-10 itself through the downtown corridor. So we'll see. I mean, I think that it wouldn't be too unreasonable to want the project to go smoothly, but if some people feel that they're getting the raw end of the deal, I wouldn't be surprised if they also take whatever actions they can here. So a lot more to get to there, RJ, with talk about energy independence, that we should be energy independent and large and in charge. I think, is that the modern version of the speak softly and carry a big stick, but referring there to the Saudis and UAE unhappy with, or at least not willing to take our calls. Some, just to mention it briefly here, some potential impacts to, reserve currencies internationally with, I may have heard of petro-dollars previously. What about the petro-yuan? That is something being discussed there. Potential deals of accepting the yuan, the Chinese currency, when it comes to accepting oil deals from China. So if there are inklings, rumblings of international realignments that could come along with that, though I'm sure the Saudis are not terrifically interested in totally ticking off the U.S. as one of their favorite markets, and otherwise arms suppliers. But if they're willing to play both ends against the middle, I also wouldn't be surprised. But let's get to those phone calls right now. Again, the number to call, 915-544-5876, 544 KTSM. We have Alfonso in the Mission Valley with us right now. Alfonso, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, I got a comment to make about those. The whole PD's losing, El Paso PD's listening. You know that thing about with the cameras. I think it's been people have wanted it, but they always seem to. But they have buddies up there in city council that always don't listen to the civilian population. And I've known people that have had their civil rights. Not just Hispanic and African Americans, but also white people that also here in El Paso gotten their rights violated by El Paso PD. And I know I met Danny, and then he asked me if I thought he was guilty. I said, no, to me, you don't look like the kind of person that would commit murder. So, but I'm glad that he got exonerated. But the thing about it, look at all the injustice that they've done. One police chief, and I'm glad they're getting the buddy cameras. One police chief that was not from El Paso, the former L.A. police captain Leach, he wanted to clean out the police department. He did, because he went to talk to a group of University of Texas El Paso students. He wanted new blood in the police department. He wanted to make changes, and he was making changes. And I don't care. And I'll tell you, I got relatives that are law enforcement in Los Angeles, and they're a lot better, more professional in dealing with the people, and they're out there hunting. The what do you call it? The ones that are really committing the crimes. Here, they're most of the time they're always busy giving traffic tickets. Looks like that's all they're doing. And it's really
the most visible part.
I'm telling you, I'm glad they got the body cameras, because especially and if they did an injustice to that woman that they tried to charge her for a DWI, it wasn't even true. But it's they've had it coming for a long time, and I'm glad. And they need to get better. They need to better train these cops. To me, they're a bunch of thugs out in the street. Have a good day.
Yeah, sure thing. Thanks for the point in the call there. I just want to make it perfectly clear, fully support our El Paso Police Department, and also agree they should be held to a high standard. To those whom much is given, much must be asked. And so the power that they have over you and me in general societal situations definitely lends itself to accountability. And I think that, body cameras, in some of the highest profile incidents, they can become contentious, but in general, my experience, my reading previous to this action here by El Paso City Council is that, frankly, they reduce complaints, because it can be shown that, what you were saying doesn't really bear out if it's a frivolous complaint. So I think it can actually help officers that way. But in those most important situations, accountability is important. And so the question had come up earlier, and found the answer here about what has been bought so far. So according to our news partners at KFOX 14, the money will go towards digital video recording systems, which includes 700 body-worn cameras and 410 mobile video recorders for the department here. So I believe the purchase, according to this, is still to come here. So that's a important thing to make. Also, interesting perspective they get from a local defense attorney to say how police body cameras could affect local trials. I know that proof is often thought of in the pudding, so the idea of having it right in front of you there can make things a little bit clearer. So again, accountability, but also respect for it. I think these are mutually assured concepts in this. So Calvin Williams saying that I think El Paso Police Department is pretty good. He agrees that they're very good, don't have the problems other blue cities have. Michael Perez saying that body cameras tend to exonerate the police officers so much that some cities do not want to have the footage released publicly. I would say that I get a little bit suspicious anytime it said, well, why don't you release the footage? It's a little dubious to me, but I think it's an important step here. I think we have another call on the point here right now. We do have Tom on the west side here with us right now. Tom, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you, Andrew. What I wanted to do is I wanted to comment about NATO. I think the situation that's going on between Russia and Ukraine is really largely due to the fact that NATO exists. If we were not in NATO, the European countries would have to be dealing with this a lot more than we would. And we'd also be in better position to support anybody, whether it's Ukraine or anybody else that would be standing up to Russia. And I just wanted to get your thoughts on that.
There's a whole discussion that's been going on in the background of this, of the, comments and instructions from the founders, including the farewell speech of, George Washington, don't get involved in entangling alliances, which, it does seem a little, applicable to the current situation. But I mean, I don't think if the United States was in it, NATO would exist, because I mean, you got some other, major European powers on there, but I mean, even the entire fractured nature of the European continent and all its different leaders, they can barely agree on one, even slightly overarching government themselves, much less the idea of true defense agreements on this. So I'm not even sure NATO would exist. And frankly, the question had come up before this conflict was starting, or even the ramp up to it, of why does NATO continue to exist? Because it was the very clear, opposed to the Warsaw Pact, the Western version of it, without the same kind of firm control there. So I think, frankly, this conflict has breathed new life into the need for NATO. I mean, you've seen other countries such as Finland, which is very much in a very similar kind of situation right on the border with Russia, that had been kind of like, well, we're ready for our own conflict. We don't really need y'all. And now them saying, well, maybe we're wrong about that. Maybe we should look at it. And like Kosovo asking for a U.S. base, and now looking at wanting to be more involved in these kind of international agreements. So, I mean, hindsight 2020, if we were in this, what would be possible for us now? Would we be in a similar situation? I kind of tend to think that, given the entire post-World War II geopolitical history and international relations involvement of the U.S., that even if NATO didn't exist exactly like this, something very similar would. So I don't even know if it's worth saying, well, if we weren't in it, what would happen? Because I mean, the U.S. was very much interested in doing so and enforcing its own soft power. The real difference here is soft power versus hard power, because previous, except for things like, well, Iraq and Afghanistan that NATO members willingly joined in on, the largest part of NATO has been soft power, the kind of speak softly and carry a big stick concept that is now the stick is, and the use of it is really coming into question. How should it be used? So I do see your point there about, okay, if we weren't in this, what would be possible? I just don't necessarily think, I mean, again, look at any point of the last essentially 80 years, the U.S. has been, as for essentially the last unscathed major Western country coming out of World War II, very accepting of a much more active purpose in the world. Interesting book I got called Base Nation, one about the idea of all of the international bases around the world that the U.S. has. So even if we weren't in NATO, I think we'd still be entangled in this in a couple of ways, even if just unilaterally, I have to say.
Right, but if you have countries like, did you even know that Colombia is in NATO?
So they are not actually in NATO, but they are a non-NATO ally. Like, yeah, that's been a close ally. I mean, we've been very closely aligned with the government of Colombia for a long time.
I looked it up on the internet, and Colombia is part of NATO now. So if let's say China goes after Colombia, are we obligated to defend Colombia?
I mean, okay, so there's a partnership between NATO and Colombia, and so, I mean, they are supporting of it. I don't think they have full membership, but you're right. They are, but I mean, to the point they are involved.
With Erdogan, I mean, that's a very controversial country. I don't think they align very much with our values any longer. So my point is this, I think it's time for the USA that certainly we need to pull all funding and be the big brother of NATO, let's say, but no more taxpayer funding goes to NATO. Let the Germans, the French, and Greece and Spain, let them fund NATO. We need our money for our own defense. We need it for the border patrol. So that's kind of my comment with NATO. I think NATO is just actually creates a means for the global elite and the Europeans to be able to have their hand in our military, be able to use it in things like Bosnia, for instance, and situations like that. So it's kind of like the UN, us going into conflicts under those light blue helmets under the UN. I mean, I'm not for that. Either we're in or we're out, but when we're in, we need to control it because we are the big brother of the world when it comes to the free world.
Oh, yeah.
But I think we're just really getting positioned poorly, and I think Putin is using this to his favor, and he's got us over a barrel now because he knows if any one of these little pathetic little countries in Europe gets attacked by him, we have to react, and we have to, and it's not easy for us to react because there's all kinds of different opinions to the way our system works. So we don't have a strong leader right now. So, and sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. But anyways, so that's where I think NATO is the problem, really, with the way we're positioned moving forward.
I mean, it definitely has an impact on our position. I'll fully agree with you there. But again, I don't even think if NATO had never existed, go back and change that 1949 agreement, I am strongly inclined to believe that we'd be in some kind of agreement, alliance, etc., in some formulated way that would still be bringing us pretty damn close to the situation we are now, unless you're talking some serious butterfly effect and, Truman gets hit by a truck and never signs any of his things. Like, if you want to get real speculative here, we'll see what it is, but just given U.S. foreign policy for the last few generations, I don't see us being anywhere near any other situation than we are now, even with slight tweaks. Anyway.
Okay, I'll go ahead and end there so someone else can get in.
Appreciate the point in the call there. You have a good one. I mean, there's more to be said about our priorities going forward, but if anything, coming out of this, unless it is just total capitulation and kowtowing to Putin coming out of this, which would be a huge problem, I don't see NATO going away anytime soon or it being, frankly, any weaker. I mean, the amount of unity within NATO countries right now is at an all-time high, easily said here. So we are well overdue for a break right now. So coming out of the break, we will get to more of those calls in the line here. So if you want to call in, the number to do so is 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. Back after this break with more Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
I-10 eastbound at Loop 375 Trans Mountain, a disabled vehicle blocking the right shoulder. I-10 westbound right around Schuster and Sunbow Road. There's an accident there. Loop 375 northbound at Iron Medics, stalled vehicle blocking the right shoulder there too. And an injury accident, Montana Avenue eastbound at Geronimo with EMS crew on the scene. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
This report is sponsored by DuckDuckGo. Protect your privacy for free with DuckDuckGo.
I bought football tickets for my husband's birthday, and now I'm in a football bubble. All I see online are articles and ads about football. I hate feeling manipulated. I downloaded DuckDuckGo and saw a difference right away. Take back your privacy online with DuckDuckGo. Privacy simplified.
Anyone can get long COVID, even Rob, age 22.
I got COVID in September of 2020, and a few weeks later, I started to have long-term problems. I used to run 5 to 6 miles a day. Now, when I walk up a flight of stairs, I'm gasping for air. It feels like my brain is clouded and I can't think straight.
Getting vaccinated against COVID-19 is the best way to prevent long COVID. Find vaccines near you at vaccines.gov. Paid for by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services.
Okay, I don't know who needs to hear this, but if you're not shopping spring essentials at Kohl's, you're missing out. I just got 20% off the cutest outfit from Sonoma Goods for Life, 25% off Hurley, which my son loves, and 25% off Champion and Adidas. Did I mention I also got an extra 15% off and earned Kohl's cash? Here's to longer days and more time to save. Select styles, 15% offer ends March 20th. Hurley, Champion, Adidas, coupons do not apply. Some exclusions apply. See store or Kohl's.com for details.
More than 6 million Americans are living with Alzheimer's, with more than 11 million family members and friends serving as caregivers. The toll of the disease is monumental, and no one should face Alzheimer's or dementia by themselves. Free help is available 24/7. For resources and support, visit the Alzheimer's Association at alz.org or call the helpline at 800-272-3900. You are not alone.
Weather and traffic info. You need it? We have it. Traffic and weather all day. Stay informed. News Radio 690 KTSM.
So I'm a dog, and I just got adopted by this new human guy, and I'm starting to wonder how he got along without me. I mean, okay, something as simple as walking around the block. He's got this leash thing, and he puts me on one end and him on the other, and I'm just taking him around. I think he's afraid of getting lost. Without that leash and me guiding him along, I don't think he'd find his way back home. But it's kind of cute.
A person is the best thing to happen to a shelter pet. Be that person. Adopt. Brought to you by the Ad Council and the ShelterPetProject.org.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. A lot of things we're talking about here today. the many impacts that can be seen directly in our area coming out of the whole Ukrainian conflict are pretty significant, including the address from Congress today, of course, by Volodymyr Zelensky, president of the Ukraine. I mean, a lot of things coming out of it. One point that was brought up there by a previous caller about NATO is that one impact we are seeing out of this conflict, besides unity, is defense spending increase. So there's a kind of misconception out there about NATO dues or something like that, and then military services are provided. It's that each individual country is supposed to essentially meet, that kind of 2% mark here. So it's been referred previously as a not paying enough, and we're making up the gap there. It was pretty much just enforced levels, and so whether they're actually reasonable partners of it or not, a reasonable question to be asked. But of course, we got a bunch of countries, Germany prime among them, saying, oh, yeah, we're spending a lot more, and them going to now be looking to acquire a bunch of F-35s, the fifth generation U.S. stealth fighter jets. So, yeah, there are already things set in motion by this that are going to continue regardless of how this conflict resolves itself, I do believe. But otherwise, the local impacts we're seeing from this, I mean, gas prices are omnipresent in all of these discussions, but also the border situations, the impacts that is having, the further issues can be caused by Ukrainian refugees showing up at the southern border, if not in our area immediately. A lot more to get into here, and also some about police forces, supply levels, body cams, a lot to get into today, and a lot of questions being brought up here. RJ saying over on the Facebook page that we're very fortunate here in El Paso. Crime has gone up a little bit, but compared to LA, DC, New York, and Chicago, we can't gripe here. I'm pretty happy with the way we are in a lot of ways here in this area. Just hope things continue, and that we can, think the part of it is going to be us continuing to discuss it here. But let's go back to those phone calls here. Again, the number to call, 915-544-5876, 544 KTSM. We do have Ben on the east side here with us right now. Ben, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you, Andrew. Okay, you touched on this a while back, but the birth of the petrodollar.
Oh, yes.
Came about with an agreement between Saudi Arabia and the United States in the 70s, right?
I do believe so, but that's a little bit before my time, but has been the prevailing system regardless ever since, yeah.
Okay. In the 70s, the United States and Saudi Arabia came to an agreement saying that all oil will be purchased with petrodollars or U.S. greenbacks. Okay. Now, and that means that Saudi Arabia would only accept payment from other countries with petrodollars, which means that if the UK, France wanted oil, they had to convert their money into dollars, and they could buy oil. Now, now because of Biden's wonderfulness, he has angered the Saudi Arabians. The Saudis are very, very upset with him about his stance with the reporter that got killed and everything else. Anyway, now they are starting to talk with the Chinese about maybe making, taking the yuan for payment for the petrodollar. Now that means that other countries, the African countries, any country that wants to buy oil from Saudi Arabia now can also use the Chinese yuan. What is that going to do to the petrodollar?
It's going to definitely cut its dominance. And some of the things that we don't quite get into on this program, but that I watch, are the idea of, the United States dollar has enjoyed some unprecedented use worldwide, at least in history, because of its status as a reserve currency, because of its relative stability here, and with questions rising about that, including, of course, inflation. But now this would it raises further questions about that going forward, if that actually will be maintained at all. Absolutely.
Yeah, it makes it to where basically the U.S. dollar is probably going to be inflated quite a bit and everything, even more than it is now. Overnight, we could become Venezuela or Mexico, because our dollar, we've spent $126 trillion bailing out banks all over the world, everything else, or $1 trillion, I'm sorry, $1 trillion. Okay. So we're talking about, we've inflated our dollar by ourselves by doing that, but we actually had a dollar that had some validity. Now, what validity do we have in our dollar? And are the people of these other countries going to start dealing in other things besides the U.S. dollar? And what happens at that point?
I mean, we start getting a little bit off book in terms of what might happen. I mean, there's a lot of speculation, a lot of economic analysis that has happened about it, but it may shake the U.S.'s position in the whole geopolitical order because, I mean, the U.S. has been, I mean, not a non-practitioner of hard power, but soft power, economic sanctions, those kind of things have been the primary U.S. mechanism of enforcing its will around the world. And so if that starts failing, and I mean, it may even seen then as a backfiring of the whole can't use dollar transactions part of the sanction that has been put on Russia. And even then, people around the world might be thinking, kind of similar to what we've been talking about with the whole WMDs, maybe I need this to enforce my sovereignty. That kind of a power when it comes to currency controls only works as much as, well, you don't use it for the most part. The more you have to use it, the weaker it's going to get. And even just the threat of it potentially being used, as it has been there, may make other countries think, okay, well, if this were to happen to me, we'd be screwed. So maybe we should look at alternatives. So there's some analysis out there that this may have sped up that process even further, even if it is well-intentioned, whether or not it works out and the long-term impacts, something I'm certainly looking at.
Well, has anybody heard of the USD digital dollar?
Yes, I have, and yeah, that one
programmable digital dollar that the Fed is actually looking at now, and what that would mean, a programmable digital dollar, which would mean that they would have absolute control of anything you buy. They could, if you don't have a ESG score, a social score that is very high. And everything, you may not be able to go to a certain store in order to buy a product, and that is what is going to come about with this thing. The end game is the destruction of American sovereignty.
I mean, it's got a lot of concerning aspects to it. I'll certainly agree with you there. I mean, whether or not, I mean, we've seen some national level experiments happening with cryptocurrencies. Of course, the whole El Salvador situation. That's a slightly different one, though, of course, because they're just buying currency as opposed to then creating a whole new one here. I mean, there's been a lot of moves in federal regulation into the crypto space as it is, though this would be a whole nother level. It's coming up in the news a lot more lately. Not sure if it's actually moved on just yet, but I mean, when these kind of statements coming out, an inertia is created, I'll agree. And yeah, I think there's a lot of people saying like, okay, sure, maybe Russia has deserved what they're getting, but the idea of overnight they're being able to turn off because of reasons, and we're currently in control of them, but what if there were to come up a situation where we weren't in control of them anymore, when it has been decided by forces completely outside of our realm of influence that, by the way, you can't do anything involving your money anymore if it's of that kind? There are some disturbing implications, we'll freely agree, and would really hope that as the United States government in general starts looking towards that there will be some of our representatives and such and elected officials saying, by the way, let's look at some safeguards to make sure that if it comes to this, it's not going to happen. But not a whole lot of talk about that on current campaign trails, though I'm sure now with these statements coming out, it'll become a little bit more prevalent going forward. We'll hope so anyway.
But didn't that happen in Canada, where the truckers all of a sudden found that they didn't have money to buy, their bank accounts were closed down, everything else, because they were trading in Bitcoin. Okay. So, I mean, if they can do it with Bitcoin, they can certainly do it with the U.S. dollar. And our freedoms, I said sovereignty, I was talking about freedom.
Oh, sure.
For me to go down and actually, if I want a product because I desire that product, I may not be able to get that product because my government doesn't like the way I talk.
I mean, yeah, closing of accounts is certainly slightly more conventional that way, except for the whole Bitcoin accounts come along with it. I mean, let's just say that there's a lot of disturbing implications that I would love to see further congressional review into once we get there. We're due for that next break right now, so thank you for the point in the call. Real quick, if you can, then.
The less chance, everybody's talking about the less chance of conflict if you just have a partial fly zone. Are you really willing to risk nuclear war for less chance of conflict? Think about it.
Oh no, that's
nuts.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a very valid point here. And again, I find it an interesting rhetorical statement, the one I was referring to there from Congressman Tony Gonzalez. But yeah, in application, a whole lot of problems come along with that. So thank you for the point in the call. Do appreciate it here. Got to take that next break right now, trying to get back on track here. If you're on the line, stay there. If you want to call in, the number to do so, 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. Back after this break with more Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
I'm Justin Creed, your CBS 4 News Update. A man from Juarez is behind bars this morning in connection to a deadly shooting in El Paso's Lower Valley. 20-year-old Stefano Valdez is accused of shooting and killing 29-year-old Luis Ramos. The shooting happened at about 2 a.m. Monday morning in an apartment complex on Colonel near Zaragoza and Geranium. Investigators say a woman first reported that she shot the victim in self-defense. Investigators later learned that the victim assaulted her the night before. Police say that she and Valdez faked a self-defense claim. Investigators say Valdez was the one who pulled the trigger. He's being held on a $1 million bond. An El Paso man was arrested at his job yesterday after trying to solicit an underage girl. According to police, that girl was actually an undercover officer. 35-year-old Ivan Adain sent nude photos and sexual explicit messages to a person he thought was a 15-year-old girl. He was arrested and is now charged for online solicitation of a minor. With your CBS 4 News Update, I'm Justin Cree.
News Radio 690. Traffic all day.
Couple of things slowing down the I-10 eastbound north of the city right now. I-10 eastbound north of Vinton. Got a large semi-rig that's blocking the right shoulder. Stay left there. I-10 eastbound at Trans Mountain. A disabled vehicle blocking the right shoulder. And an injury accident South Desert Boulevard, southbound at Vinton. Medical units arriving there. An injury accident at Red and Donovan. El Paso traffic.
Severe Weather Center, this is Chief Meteorologist Sandra Diaz. We've got our next front coming in, and that means increasing winds through tonight as well as for your Thursday. The areas that will be hit the hardest with the strongest of the wind gusts will be on the east side areas of the mountain ranges. Also, with that next system, we'll see a drop in temperatures, almost about 10 to 15 degrees cooler for your Thursday afternoon.
This report is sponsored by Staples Stores. Staples Print and Marketing Services help small businesses print big with wide format signs and banners. Right now, get $10 off custom printed signs, banners, and posters when you spend $50 or more. Offer ends 3/26. Visit staples.com/signage for details. Staples, the working and learning store.
What's done more to improve overall health and wellness? Modern medicine or personal hygiene? Actually, it's both. But considering that bathing went mainstream in the 1800s and brushing your teeth in the 1900s, isn't it time for something new, like cleaning your nose? After all, your nose is the body's air filter for trapping dirt and germs, the first line of defense against allergens, bacteria, and viruses from getting into your lungs. But how do you clean your nose? With Navage. Navage isn't medicine, it's more like plumbing. Navage uses powered suction to pull saline in one nostril to the very back of the nose where germs can get trapped and multiply, and then out the other nostril, flushing out mucus and microbes so you can breathe better, sleep deeper, snore less, and stay healthier. Join over 2 million others and find out for yourself how refreshing and easy to use Navage is. At Navage.com, Walgreens, CVS, Rite Aid, Bed Bath, and Target. Navage. Clean nose, healthy life.
Hey guys, it's Edge Martinez. My family's gathering in the kitchen. It's our favorite place to catch up. Keep germs out. I use Lysol on countertops, tables, and the fridge handle. Nothing kills more viruses on more surfaces than Lysol disinfectant spray. Lysol, what it takes to protect. Use as directed.
I bought football tickets for my husband's birthday, and now I'm in a football bubble. All I see online are articles and ads about football. I hate feeling manipulated. I downloaded DuckDuckGo and saw a difference right away. Take back your privacy online with DuckDuckGo. Privacy simplified.
This report is sponsored by DuckDuckGo. Protect your privacy for free with DuckDuckGo.
Freedom of speech lives here.
To me, freedom of speech is being able to say anything you want.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM. News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. A lot of ways to interact with the show. Of course, we got that phone line open, if full up at the moment here. Busy week we got, but don't worry, Friday is coming is the best I'll say right now. The number to call is 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM, Ukraine, the impacts from it that are numerous and almost impossible to codify within one single show. Keep talking about that, but local currents coming out of that more specifically, but then also things such as road construction, the whole freeway revamping, body cameras, narcan supplies for El Paso Police Department. All of these are important. Some of the things we're getting to, but get to more of those calls here. Some of the comments coming in. I think Andrew Zignorant, that's the way it's supposed to be said here. How weird. I think it meant to be slightly a dig at me, but seriously, you go back 30 years. Like, just step in a time machine, step out, and pull even, a very intelligent, even economist off the street and say, by the way, let me tell you about what cryptocurrency is and how this might have upended the global order. They would throw you in the funny farm, because that is such an out there concept. So you cannot tell me that things have definitely gotten weirder and weirder and seemingly be getting weirder faster. It is. I tend to overuse that phrase, I will freely admit, but I can't find a better one to describe what is going on right now, because yes, there's good. Yes, there's bad. But overall, the way it ends up shaping out, like the impacts on our area, you got to admit, probably weird that we might be seeing more economic activity out of these high oil prices, even if the oil prices have dipped back down, but gas prices, even if just spurring more, it's, again, weird. Anyway, getting to more calls on the line here. Number to call 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. Do we have Raul in the Northeast on the line here with us right now? Raul, thanks for joining us.
Hey, Andrew. Yeah, a couple of things. Number one, NATO was founded by the United States. We want it there, and not me really, the globalist capitalists want it there to maintain the global economic order. Number two, about that survey that says that if Russia invaded us, well, that's not going to happen, first of all. Stupid premise. Let's start with that. But with that stupid premise, nonetheless, of Russia invading us and how many Americans will choose to leave the country, well, I'll remind your Trumpian listeners that Donald Trump sought and got 5 draft deferments during the Vietnam War. So I would imagine that he and his kids would probably flee if that were to happen. Now, about Putin, bad guy. Now, I really didn't think about Putin all that much until he hacked our election and helped Donald Trump become the president. Then I started worrying about this Putin guy. He's a bad guy. And yet, Donald Trump called him a genius, said he was savvy. Donald Trump showed terrible judgment in thinking that this man was good for the United States of America. And then last point, some of your callers are parroting the Russian line about, well, maybe we should get out of NATO. Well, that's what Trump was trying to do. He said it was obsolete. He was ready to get out of it. He alienated our NATO allies. Now we see how vital they are to the freedom of this poor country that's been invaded by this dictator and big buddy of Donald Trump.
Okay, let's make one thing clear here. You can respect an adversary while then still not being in favor of him. Never took anything exactly as like, he was a good buddy of ours, Russia, from anything particularly during the Trump administration. But, I mean, you do at least have to respect the capability. I mean, the fact that the now president of Russia, the former KGB colonel, I believe, equivalent of colonel within the KGB, if I'm not mistaken, there is at the very least savvy and capable, even if some of the military disasters that are happening as part of this whole Ukrainian war are baffling, and maybe he has overextended himself. I mean, there's a whole lot of speculation of whether he's got testosterone issues, brain aneurysm, whatever, that are almost, they're sideshows to the real point of the conversation that previously, Putin has been a very savvy political international actor. There's a whole anti-cargo cults mentality that they have espoused, both as a form of domestic control and of, poking at the U.S. in the international order that's come along with it. So again, if you're unhappy with the previous relations with Ukraine and, Putin there, it's reasonable to say that this, Putin is an intelligent individual, even if he seems to be blundering a bit lately, and worthy of respect and therefore proper preparation. I mean, it's no secret that Donald Trump previously showed a little bit of a predilection towards, well, what he might have liked to have seen. And the idea of being the CEO of America, I think, I mean, given his whole experience as a business person and all that kind of stuff, wasn't too surprised with his idea of wanting to kind of shake up the international order, do more bilateral agreements as opposed to major international ones. I mean, that was a serious change in U.S. foreign policy that was being effectuated under the Trump administration. So, I mean, I wasn't surprised about too much of any of that. And even now, you know, Trump has come out and said that I can't believe he actually invaded, was going to use it as leverage. So misjudging can certainly occur and happen here. But to your point about NATO being important for Ukraine, I mean, let's be perfectly clear. NATO hasn't done much. Individual countries have sent arms and armament here. If you want to call that under the banner of NATO, you know what, sure, I'll even concede that point here. But I mean, if you didn't hear the statements we played earlier in the show, Vladimir Zelensky, president of Ukraine, has been incredibly frustrated with NATO and their lack of willingness to fully step into that here. Now, whether that's a good idea or not is certainly up for debate. And I mean, you bought a war if you do it, even with just the no-fly zone or any of the more active transfers of weapons and arms that come along with what we're doing currently. I mean, there's still an avenue that Putin could pursue, saying that, well, you have declared yourselves active combatants with supplying them, and therefore we're escalating this. Frankly, I think he might do that if he is able to fully prosecute this war in the way he would want to, and which is why I think it's very important that he not be allowed to. But there's a lot to get into there. But, I mean, again, if you're focused solely on the previous administration, what they're doing, sure, you know, we're reaching fan fiction levels, though, of analysis here if we're not looking at the current situations and what is the important things to look at right now with the tens of millions, billions of dollars that are on the table to be sent to there and how it's being used and what this is actually going to mean for the prosecution of this conflict here. All right, moving on, taking another call here. We do have Andrew on the west side here with us. Andrew, thanks for joining us.
Yes, thank you. Reference to what one of your callers saying concerning the no-fly zone. Yeah, if you're going to have a no-fly zone, you need to enforce it, and that's going to be a prelude to war. So I don't know what people are going to do about that.
I think the most reasonable thing that could be done, again, the whole no-fly zone, the closest we got was that potential supplying of the Polish, Soviet airplanes to the Ukrainian, Air Force, but you don't do a supposedly, under-the-table arms transfer through public statements. I think that those S-300s that Zelensky actually specifically mentioned, those being just slightly transferred to, across this, finding their way into Ukraine is probably the most reasonable thing that would come towards effectuating that currently. That's my expectation anyway.
True. What worries me even more is Russia's increasing influence in Mexico. As I have stated before, the president of Mexico has refused to invoke sanctions against Russia. And does that make him a Russian asset?
An asset to them, maybe, but whether an official one, that's a bit more speculative than I usually get into.
True. Also, I'll be brief. Russ Leach, I do remember him, chief of police here in El Paso. He did go eventually to Riverside Police in California, but he resigned the job after crashing his city vehicle while driving under the influence of prescription medication.
Oh my, didn't see that. Did dig up the LA Times article back from 1995 when he was being transferred or moving from the Harbor Division Captain Russell Leach of the LAPD to the first, the way the LA Times put it at the time, expected to be the first quote-unquote outsider to land the job of police chief in El Paso after his nomination by the town's mayor on Tuesday, again, back in February of 1995. So found that, but interesting to hear about the end of the career then, too.
Yes. Oh, and as for that Raul character, about that poll, that was a Quinnipiac poll. What Raul fails to tell you was that it showed that the majority of people that would leave the country and not fight and stand if Russia invaded the United States were Democrats.
I mean, there's another adage that came to my mind in that particular statement that, wars are declared by the old and rich and fought by the young and poor. So I would fully expect that to be, again, it made sense that they asked the question in light of what has happened with the Ukraine situation, but that, the idea of Russia, a Red Dawn kind of situation is still pretty outside the realm of possibility at this point. It is, I think, a timely question to ask, absolutely.
One last thing, also, Bill Maher of all people said, if Trump was such a big supporter of Putin, then why did not Putin invade Ukraine while Trump was president? So figure that one out, Raul.
I mean, there's a lot of analysis to go into that here, but you have to admit the timing that has happened. Again, the way I'm putting it forth is that it would have been a wild card response because that's what most things were during the Trump administration. Let's be perfectly honest. Whereas during this administration, it's, you could have probably pretty well pre-scripted this, how it's going to go through. And I think that is what, frankly, the Russian response has been based upon.
Well, true. Anyway, guys, chill out there and take a cruise in your Edsel where the stress is hitting you strong. Anyway, have a good afternoon.
Sure thing. Thank you for the point in the call there. Do appreciate it here. All right, we got to take that last break here. We're going to squeeze in a couple more calls coming out of the break here. And, of course, those pound 250 calls. So stay tuned. Back after this break with more Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
Couple of things slowing down the I-10 eastbound north of the city right now. I-10 eastbound north of Vinton. Got a large semi-rig that's blocking the right shoulder. Stay left there. I-10 eastbound at Trans Mountain. A disabled vehicle blocking the right shoulder. And an injury accident South Desert Boulevard, southbound at Vinton. Medical units arriving there. An injury accident at Red and Donovan. El Paso traffic.
This report is sponsored by DuckDuckGo. Protect your privacy for free with DuckDuckGo.
I feel like I'm being haunted by a pair of headphones. Everywhere I go is a creepy ad for headphones I looked at one time. I hate that feeling like I'm being watched. I downloaded DuckDuckGo and saw a difference right away. Take back your privacy online with DuckDuckGo. Privacy simplified.
Hey, El Paso, this is Ivan Ochoa, General Manager from Sunland Park, Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram, Fiat. We've extended Ram truck months, and deals are even bigger and better with 0% interest, more for your trade, huge savings, and a huge selection of new and certified pre-owned vehicles with more arriving daily.
Buy now and get huge savings during Ram Truck Month at Sunland Park Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram, Fiat. Save thousands in interest with 0 APR for 72 months on the all-new 2022 Jeep Wagoneer, full-size SUV with third-row seating. 2022 Ram trucks with 0 APR for 72 months. 0 down, 0 payments for 90 days. Upside down in your trade? We want it. Even if you owe thousands more than it's worth, we've partnered with even more aggressive lenders with great rates and terms for good credit, or even if your credit is less than perfect. All military personnel and all first responders receive an additional discount. Thank you for your service. Sunland Park Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram, Fiat. Where buying your truck is fun. At I-10 at Sunland Park Drive or online at sunlandparkdodge.com. Estamos en tu esquina, El Paso strong. Excludes factory rebate at dealer discount plus DTNL. 0 APR is $13.89 per thousand finance. On select vehicles with approved credit. Offers not combined.
Okay, I don't know who needs to hear this, but if you're not shopping spring essentials at Kohl's, you're missing out. I just got 20% off the cutest outfit from Sonoma Goods for Life, 25% off Hurley, which my son loves, and 25% off Champion and Adidas. Did I mention I also got an extra 15% off and earned Kohl's cash? Here's to longer days and more time to save. Select styles, 15% offer ends March 20th. Hurley, Champion, Adidas, coupons do not apply. Some exclusions apply. See store or Kohl's.com for details.
More than 6 million Americans are living with Alzheimer's, with more than 11 million family members and friends serving as caregivers. The toll of the disease is monumental, and no one should face Alzheimer's or dementia by themselves. Free help is available 24/7. For resources and support, visit the Alzheimer's Association at alz.org or call the helpline at 800-272-3900. You are not alone.
News Radio 690 KTSM El Paso.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso. Short timing it here in this last segment. We've got a couple calls we'll get to here. We can squeeze them in here, but don't forget, coming up a little bit later this week, we got some more topics to get into, some more focuses on economic development, some more of those downtown buildings being developed. We'll get into that here in the coming days. And, of course, Friday is on the horizon, as has already been brought up when we do take those comments and calls throughout the show. Also, some more subjects we're working on for you in coming weeks, talking more about the whole nearshoring kind of phrase I've been working on here. Actually, a company that calls themselves that, working on well, doing exactly that, getting the supply chain shorter. So we'll get into all that here, but let's squeeze in just another call or two here. You have to get that pound 250 call as well. Frankie leaving us what? Anyone can leave a call on the pound 250 system. By the way, this is not a private line for anyone, but more utilized than not by someone else here. Pound 250, keyword Talk El Paso, and you can leave your own comments, well, much like this.
This is Mr. Frankie. I just heard Andrew talking about me, saying I need to chill out. What is this mush? What? I am the most chilled out individual in the entire universe of all the universes of the Milky Galaxy. I will engage with you any kind of delightful, honorable discourse using all the appropriate words of an unabridged dictionary. I will tell you that right now. You go off the rails and start talking about Donnie Daughter doofus ideas and stupid stuff like that, I will smash you to smithereens. I will pour beer on your head. I will step on your gout-infected toe and laugh at you while you're in pain. But other than that, we can have a nice conversation. Not a problem at all, Andrew. Just give me a chance. We can have a lovely, lovely, lovely conversation. No problem.
In some of the discussion about potential meetups, events, that kind of thing, I've often debated with myself whether it should be at like a library, conference room, bar, or boxing ring sometimes. If it ever comes up, we'll be sure to let you know. But let's squeeze in another call or two here before we end the program. Right now, we do have Nate on the east side here with us. Nate, thanks for joining us.
Yes, Andrew, thank you, and God bless you for all you do. And this wonderful program is really a big benefit. I'll be as quick as I can. I just want to hit about three topics. I think first thing, I would go to the El Paso Police Department. I've lived here since August of 1999, and I haven't seen a finer police department overall and relative to what I've seen as I've lived all across the United States of America and in several different countries. And of course, I think that I just want to reiterate something that you said once. If we are entrusted with something, like in the military or school teacher, whatever, even being parents, even being neighbors, that's the higher trust. We got to hold ourselves to a higher standard. So we want to just encourage and support our police department, but do encourage, that we are holding them as we should ourselves. It's called personal responsibility.
Absolutely.
To a higher standard. The body cameras, I just say this, people raised all kinds of stuff when they put the little stop cameras at the stoplights. Oh yeah. My Lord, that went berserk. But now every day you can sit and watch people running through the stoplights, and people are getting slammed and hit and runs and everything. But I guess we wanted the latter, but we get what we asked for. So anyway, let's support our police department overall, and of course deal with any issues. Last couple of things, I know I'm going a bit long here, but I just want to say that I was really impressed by listening to the president of Ukraine this morning and taking that stand of how they're standing tall and supporting their country. And that is a wonderful example that we should follow. And we started that, but it's fading so quickly because of lack of loyalty and a sense of commitment, because everybody wants to just make money. Money's not everything. We say that money is the root of all evil. I know we need it, but there's certain thing called loyalty and brotherhood and brotherly love and taking care of your brother and different things like that. If we lose that, we are going to be in a serious hurt. And be prepared. Just look at the preparedness efforts that El Paso has made and currently making about being prepared should circumstances do go bad. I won't state whatever, but we got to be able to support ourselves for at least 8 to 10 months with water, food, and the basic and things. That's where we should be. Individuals can be self-reliable now instead of waiting on somebody else to do it for us.
Absolutely. We'll agree with you there. And we'll have to get more into that here on future shows because we are super out of time for this one. So I do thank you for the point in the call, but we'll have to leave it there for today. I've been your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you, everyone who did tune in, call in, comment, participate in the show. We'll do it again tomorrow. Promise. 4 to 6 p.m. right here on News Radio 690 KTSM. So been your host, Andrew J. Polk. Stay safe out there. Look twice for motorcycles when out on the road, and have a great evening, y'all. We'll see you tomorrow.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
An accident just reported Gateway Boulevard, westbound at North Copia Street, north of the city, I-10 eastbound, north of Vinton, and just below the state line, there's a large semi that's blocking the right shoulder. There's an injury accident in that same area, South Desert Boulevard, southbound at Vinton. A stalled vehicle blocking the right shoulder, I-10 westbound at Geronimo, with multiple vehicles off to the right there. Gary Edwards, El Paso traffic.
Hey, El Paso, this is Ivan Ochoa, General Manager from Sunland Park Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram Fiat. We've extended Ram truck months, and deals are even bigger and better with 0% interest, more for your trade, huge savings, and a huge selection of new and certified pre-owned vehicles with more arriving daily.
Buy now and get huge savings during Ram Truck Month at Southern Park Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram, Fiat. Save thousands in interest with 0 APR for 72 months on the all-new 2022 Jeep Wagoneer, full-size SUV with third-row seating. 2022 Ram trucks with 0 APR for 72 months, 0 down, 0 payments for 90 days. Upside down on your trade? We want it, even if you owe thousands more than it's worth.
News on the hour and a half. Traffic and weather all day. News Radio 690 is KTSM AM El Paso, an iHeart radio station.
NBC News Radio, I'm Brian Shook. Russian President Vladimir Putin is being called a war criminal by President Biden. He made those comments just hours after Ukraine's president spoke to members of Congress. Meanwhile,